Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
Hey, y'all. Look who we have here. Jake Rowe. I'm Wes Blankenship. Palmer Toms is in a hotel room somewhere. We're live in our media workroom. Going to apologize in advance to everyone else sitting in here. Y'all can say hey if you want. You can wave back there. It's kind of like college game day, but with a bunch of reporters who are mad at us. Guys, it's finally like the eve of this game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm ready to see some ball.
Yeah, I think we all are. And, it feels like it's been such a long week already. It felt like it was such a long month in the lead up. And, so much has been said. Had media day today. Gosh, I mean, that's drinking from a fire hose, dude. Talking to guys you haven't talked to in years or ever. Brian McClendon, I've never had a chance to really talk to A.D. Mitchell. And, Palmer and I were getting a laugh out of how we talked to AD and we felt like we had actually gotten some good stuff. And then you look through it and he didn't say anything. He's just kind of a fun kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, met a lot of cool guys today. Got to talk to a lot of cool people.
I can hear Palmer.
Which was a lot of fun.
My favorite quote from AD today was I asked him about, hey, Stetson said that you two need to get back on the same page. What does that mean to you? And he goes, like bread and butter.
Bread and butter. That's their new combo. We've had Thunder and Lightning in Georgia's backfield for a few years, and now we got A.D. Mitchell and Stetson Bennett.
We've also got a Christmas miracle here on the podcast or on the live show here because we were initially Wes couldn't hear Palmer, and now he can. So we have
maybe that was for the better
eyes have been opened
for me.
You just weren't holding your tongue right.
Yeah.
Invite y'all to hit subscribe on this YouTube channel if you don't.
Let's hear y'all in the comments section.
That's right. Well, I've got the settings where you got to be a subscriber to comment. I don't know what's going on. I think Dean Leggy's back here interfering with our SEO. Palmer, we got to look at practice today. By the way, I'm going to pull this up. In all of the years of Kirby Smart showing us a glimpse of practice before a big game, I think today takes the cake.
That's your quarterback.
You said you were ready to see some football, and I was too. I mean, we walked into practice for the second day in a row that we've had practice viewing availability. First time since September, and maybe even August. I can't quite remember when it was, but it was definitely early in the season. And, yesterday we went in and they were in pads, they were playing football. But it was more drill work. They were doing circuit drills. Jake and I were talking about the circle drill, the ring drill, how difficult that one is and how that makes you feel, how unathletic you feel doing it, and how athletic these guys looked doing it, these incredible athletes. And so we actually saw, yesterday didn't feel like it was a ton, but compared to what we saw today, at least they were wearing pads and not doing yoga. Was funny to see this team though, doing yoga. Definitely, I think the perception is, these big macho men, and doing yoga is not exactly what you would expect.
No, I mean, they do it though. I mean, they gotta stay limber, but when you're going on a shuttle from the hotel to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I don't know if you're expecting to see more, but you might want to see a little bit more or a little bit less of what Stetson Bennett's doing right there.
Yeah, that's a great photo capture right there too. And
Palmer Toms, by the way, took that picture.
PT, the pro. I mean, he's a jack of all trades, and master of them too. Palmer brought that ring drill up, and if you watched any of our video from yesterday, you probably saw what we're talking about. It's basically where you just kind of try to dip and run as fast as you can around these rings. And at 5'9", 200 pounds in high school, 210 maybe, I made it look a lot harder than Nazir Stackhouse did. at 6'3", 340, 330. So it was pretty, that there's nothing in this world that made me feel more unathletic and like I may need to be in the marching band.
I got tired watching those guys.
Yeah, I did too.
And Keely Ringo was going with the D lineman. That's part of what you saw yesterday was Kirby kind of
mashed
everything up. And I kind of did a double take. I was like, is there a D lineman with the number 5? Is that a linebacker? It makes you realize how big Keely Ringo is. Guys, I think we can just go around the horn here a little bit. What was your main takeaway from Media Day today? It can be filled with cliches and, all the expected answers that you think you're going to hear. But I think we got some access from some Georgia players today that we normally don't. And I'm curious to hear, other than your bread and butter golden quote from A.D. Mitchell, Palmer, what stood out to you today?
Yeah. I actually just posted this on the board, just posted this story to the site. So encourage you to go check it out because it was a fun one to write. And that's because he was a fun guy to talk to. And that was Nolan Smith. I feel like we've missed his presence a little bit. We see him on the sidelines. We've heard about him still being involved in practice and such. And it was good to, kind of reconnect there with Nolan. It felt like, hearing from him, hearing how he's tried to stay involved, despite the injury, and he is being, I wrote this in the lead. He had solidified status as a damn good dog already, but certainly has done nothing to change that by the way that he has responded to, being banged up, being away from the team. You can see him there. It was funny, just kind of a full circle moment on the season. Obviously Nolan would have loved to be a contributor in this game, but it's come full circle where, Wes, we were on that same field earlier this year talking to Nolan, and Nolan got in there with Stetson as well, was asking a question like he was a reporter. Did a little bit of that today with Cedric, as you can see.
Yeah, we missed a couple opportunities today. I didn't share my camera with like one of Georgia's players or something like that.
Yeah.
But,
Kenny McIntosh, the master of taking the camera and running around and getting footage for other people.
He's like a cinematographer.
I wonder what the next thing is going to be though, because that one's almost gotten cliche and it's still fun. I don't want to say it's not fun, but it's almost gotten a little bit cliche. But I tell you, I don't know. We didn't really pay close attention to Ohio State's, but if it's anything like the press conferences were in terms of the seriousness. I don't think you saw that much with the Ohio State guys. Maybe I think Kirk Herbstreit's son at one point, Palmer, right? Wasn't he walking around with a camera?
Yeah.
His son, who is a walk-on there.
Yeah, his son is a walk-on tight end, second-year tight end. I don't think so. I looked further into it because we were talking about that. He and one of his roommate, an offensive lineman, Zach is his name. Zach Herbstreit and his roommate have a podcast. So they're our competition guys. Maybe we shouldn't talk about them. But they have a podcast. So they got out and we're asking some questions. But I don't think it was him that was walking around with the camera. If I could be wrong, but it looked like it was the safety, Latham.
Okay. Well, those guys, I mean, they've had a pretty interesting week, as all the Georgia fans know, with some comments. When I listened to them, maybe I'm just that objective and neutral. I didn't necessarily hear bulletin board material from Eichenberg and those dudes yesterday.
No, but it's a different tone. I feel like, it's so that's probably my main takeaway. It's just, you were talking about going around the horn here and talking about that. That's what I was going to get to was, listen, I don't think it's going to, have any sort of effect on the game. I just think it kind of tells you where these two teams are mentally. Ohio State's angry. Ohio State's desperate in some ways. It's a very serious football team. I can imagine they would be because of, kind of that whole month off. I mean, Georgia did this same thing in essence last year. Whereas, I feel like Georgia went, for better or for worse, depends on what happens. Georgia is more of a loose football team, and they're having a little fun with this. And we'll see which one is better and which one leads to better execution. But just there seems to be just kind of a very different tone in talking to the two different. I mean, even Todd Monken. I mean, Todd Monken had us in stitches yesterday, and we hadn't had a chance to talk about that yet either, which is outrageous. Todd Monken was incredible. So, I just think there's a very different tone when you look at and talk to these teams.
There's some guys when you get to hear them on these availabilities where we don't normally get to hear from guys, you kind of understand, all right, maybe this is why we don't hear from this dude all the time. He talks way too much. But I think Kirby might like it if Todd Monken spoke more because he'd take some pressure off of him with his availabilities with us, and we would be entertained and satisfied. So I think my highlight today, guys, is a little piece I put together. I was driving in from Athens and was thinking, what's the question of the day? What are these guys? What's the curveball going to be? And sometimes simpler is just better. And so I don't know what a Buckeye is, and I decided to ask Georgia's players when I was walking around, asking them real journalistic questions, of course. I decided to ask them what a Buckeye is.
Is a Buckeye?
Buckeyes.
Do you know what like everyone knows what a Bulldog is, but what is a Buckeye?
I believe it's like some part of a tree, something like that.
No, I feel like only a Buckeye can answer that question.
It's a nut off a tree.
Palmer's a Buckeye.
What's that?
All right.
What?
Broad piped up.
It's a nut off a tree.
What's a
I
nut?
looked it up.
What is
A
it?
Buckeye.
Do you know what a Buckeye is?
Do I know what a Buckeye is?
Yeah.
No.
No.
No. So that was fun. I put the full video up on our channel as well if you want to watch this when we're done here.
Wes, have you done any scientific research? I mean, obviously, the Georgia football players, that's their biggest priority, figuring out what a Buckeye is this week.
Well, Broderick Jones wanted to look it up.
They're poisonous.
They are. You do
And
not.
I knew it was a nut, but I think you asked Cedric this, and I asked you because I was watching Cedric's video, and what does it grow?
A tree.
A Buckeye tree? I mean,
Yeah.
is a
You are
Buckeye
correct.
tree a thing?
They just call it a Buckeye
I
tree.
think honestly, when I looked it up earlier this week, because I was just trying to find a different maybe.
We're all curious. About it.
I looked it up mainly just because I was just trying to find like, okay, what's another clever way I can refer to Ohio State? And when I looked it up, it's talked a lot less about a nut, more about a tree, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I
And,
guess-
and so that explains the leaves that they put on their helmets, the Buckeyes.
Allegedly so. One would think.
Somewhat explains.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean,
I tell you what, though, from that video, I think it needs to be said, Broderick Jones, stock up. Are we doing stock up? You know how I'm always messed up on this. Stock up on Broderick Jones' personality
today
because
we're
it has
talking-
really
it
come
doesn't
out
matter.
this week.
Today we're
Yeah.
chopping wood, but give us your stocks anytime, Jim.
Yeah, my stock up, Broderick Jones' personality. Got one, big one. We got a story up, and UGA posted it on their football account where he and Brock Bowers had themselves a little competition, always competing on the pool table. And, it's worth watching. It's pretty entertaining.
yeah, there's a ton of stuff. And you mentioned it was like drinking from a fire hose. It's like uploading an entire fire hose
Mm-hmm.
on our YouTube channel because we got stuff from Ohio State players and their coaches too from throughout the week, not just today, where you really get to hear from guys that we don't hear from a ton. We hear from Broderick a good bit, but I don't know if it was the change of scenery or press conference availability, but he was really funny. And I think like maybe the three funniest players on the team might be Broderick. Smile Munden's pretty funny without trying to be funny. I wouldn't say that to his face, I don't think. And Stetson's pretty funny.
Yeah. The music thing that got put out by SEC Network was really good, where Keely Ringo said that he has the worst
music taste.
taste on the team, and he said, "Do you agree with him?" Stetson just was so incredulous; it was so funny.
Yeah, you got to have more support for your quarterback than that. We are supported by the fine folks at Breaking Tea. A lot of Stetson apparel, as you can imagine. He's kind of been the guy of the year around this team, and he's got at least one more game to show that. So support him and some of the NIL initiatives that Breaking Tea set up for some of these players with Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, and Christopher Smith. We heard from all those guys as well today. and they had a lot of great insight that we hear from those dudes week in and week out. Darnell, we don't hear from as much, but I was fascinated with the rapport that he's built with Stetson and everything he's learned from Todd Monken and Todd Hartley, the Todd guys. He's learned a ton from the Todds.
Yeah, and it's, I don't think I've ever been around him when he wasn't wearing shoulder pads, and I think
He wasn't wearing shoulder pads today?
Yeah, he wasn't.
Oh, man.
That's how big he is. God, it's
What-
incredible. I mean, it's a big football team in general. It's striking how big this football team is.
He wasn't wearing shoulder pads while they were doing yoga at our practice availability.
Nobody was.
How mad was everybody on the bus?
I don't know. I mean, you come to expect these things a little bit with Kirby.
Yeah.
And Jake, you put it on the board. If they lose, that's the kind of thing that people will point to and be like, "Hey,
That's the kind of stuff you get mocked for.
Yeah.
That's what we'll point to anyway.
take-
I don't
take
know
it
if the
serious.
fans
I mean,
will.
I don't know if I will. I mean, I'm not going to be petty about it, but there's some that are, some are going to enjoy that opportunity. I mean, it's, they don't owe us anything, but
and you can't really fault them because what they've done has worked.
yeah, you just also don't have to do this dog and pony show thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to. And the comments about getting out of practice again, it's not a big deal one way or the other. It's not doesn't upset us or anything like that. But it's something that doesn't really make sense. There's no real upside, and at the
It's
end
not
of the day,
necessary.
it's just at the end of the day, it just maybe brings you, another shovel full or two of scrutiny. If things don't go like, you plan for them to go.
Lee Johnson commenting in here though that with Ohio State getting so much love from the media this week, Lee feels like the Dogs might be undervalued a bit. I don't know if Georgia necessarily is undervalued. I think Ohio State just has the better story coming into this.
Mm-hmm.
They've got, you would think, more motivation. Georgia's players would disagree with that, obviously. We've talked about how much work went into their prep for Michigan after losing to Alabama and how they got back to square one with their conditioning and how hard that was. And we've heard Kieris Jackson say that they've worked even harder this offseason than they did last year. So Georgia's players internally certainly don't feel undervalued, but I see what you're saying, Lee. There's just not there's not much to talk about other than the three of us on this call right now because it's our job to do that. But
Well, I mean, here's the thing: if you were just coming into this game, and this was anybody other than Ohio State, and you're sitting here trying to look at a team that lost in not so exciting fashion against Michigan the last time they were out, and didn't look like it was going to be in the playoff, and things were kind of down. And if you didn't look at the matchup or anything like that, you were thinking, well, this is one team's going to run over the other one. But then you think about how talented Ohio State is, how desperate Ohio State is, how angry it is, and wants to win the game, just like Georgia did last year against Michigan. I'm not saying I think it's going to turn Ohio State into a buzzsaw. Ohio State can beat Georgia, though. And I think that's something that everybody needs to kind of wrap their head around and just understand that Georgia's got to go play good football. I think you hear a lot of fans just thinking, well, if the media isn't saying, oh, just roll their helmets out there and they got them, then they're not on Georgia, or they're not high on Georgia. And I think most expect Ohio State to come out and trade some punches and fight with some pride, because they will.
yeah, I know I do. I don't want to read too much into some of the stuff for Media Day this week. I did find that Georgia does seem more secure in its identity of Georgia, of this is how we play.
Mm-hmm.
We're accustomed to these games. And Ohio State, maybe some of the comments I heard, I'm not saying they were bad. It was a contrast because Georgia wouldn't have said them. I don't think it necessarily means anything about the game, but Ohio State still had to answer a lot of questions about Michigan. And you can tell that they almost seem more focused on the rematch with Michigan in certain spots than playing Georgia. And I don't know if that's fair or not to say, but that's what I picked up on listening to some of the sound bites. Well,
and it's interesting because, again, the dynamic of a rematch with the one team you lost to was out there for Georgia last year. And, I think that I didn't feel like I think everyone knew that that was a possibility, but and maybe it's because it's not, a historic rivalry. I mean, Georgia and Alabama have built up their rivalry over the last couple of years, but it's not nearly the college football established traditional rivalry like Ohio State, Michigan. And so, the idea of maybe getting that one again in the national championship, maybe that's why that's feels like it's lingering over this a lot more than, what, hey, the potential rematch with Alabama, yada, yada, yada. Well, last year it felt like Georgia understood, hey, we've got to take care of business against Michigan.
We're not trying to go play Cincinnati. We didn't hear too much of that.
Yeah.
The other element that I'll say about that, just listening to sound bites this week, there was a lot of, remember what happened the last time an underdog Ohio State team played an SEC team. And again, I'm not saying that means Ohio State's going to lose, but I do think that it just kind of struck me because Georgia players would never say that. They'd never say anything about that. So it kind of points to me more to the differences in styles of these two teams than anything. And it filters down from the head coach, from the way they prepare. I think you mentioned last time we talked, Jake, that Ohio State practices for Georgia basically the entire time.
Yeah.
Georgia gets back to the basics. They do the spring practice drills for a couple weeks, and then they install for Ohio State in a much shorter time span. So the differences are interesting, and I can't wait to see what that means on a football field.
It's a fun matchup too. I mean, I think that's something that's also important. Everybody wants to talk about the matchup as in, oh well, it's a bad matchup for Georgia. Again, I think the 2021 Buckeyes would be a much worse matchup, but I think this one is definitely the worst that there is in this top four for Georgia. I don't know that it's as bad of a matchup as it would have been a year ago when you had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. But those contrasting styles are a big part of why I think it just adds to like the how fun this matchup can be, because you do have like kind of a physical, you got a very physical, fast defense, and you got an offense that has a strong identity, the ability to run, the ability to throw the football, a guy that's mobile, that loves to win from the pocket. He's a two-time Heisman finalist. Georgia's been up against, two top 10 offenses this year in terms of yards per play, and it kind of dominated them both. It gave up 10 points a game. It's played 3 in the top 20. Ohio State hasn't played but one team all year. Their defense has only played one team in the top 20. The matchups are just incredible, and you just wonder, like, who has the stronger weakness? Is that going to win the game here? Is the stronger weakness going to win this game? And sometimes I think it does in these big games. And I think right now, if that were your on paper decider, I think Georgia would have the edge there. But I keep going back to that desperation. And again, that too adds to this matchup, is they're going to play with their hair on fire. And, that might mean some guys playing over their heads. It might mean some guys running wide open somewhere because there's some over-aggression. There's a lot that goes into this. And I'm sure that both of these staffs are feeling pretty good right now that the hay's in the barn. They're just ready to go test it out.
All right, let's chop some wood. Actually, before we chop some wood, I want to get to one thing that you picked up today, Jake, from BMAC about Georgia's transfer portal additions. I thought that was a pretty interesting angle from a guy that we don't normally get to talk to.
Hit the jackpot. He said that Georgia hit the jackpot with the transfer portal positions, especially his area. I'd also like to give a little preview on some stuff we got coming on BMAC. I thought it was hilarious that he told me, listen, a lot of coaches, when you get a new job, you got to use the GPS to get to the Target or to get to Walmart. He said, I didn't need that. I needed the GPS to get around Georgia's building because that place has changed so much since he's been there, which I thought was hilarious. It was great to see him. I've known him for a long time. And he had some really cool stuff to say about those transfer portal receivers. Come over and read it over at DawgsHQ. But I thought it was really interesting how excited he was about it, because listen, the Georgia way is to be subdued and to act like you enjoy nothing. Yeah. And Brian McClendon
yoga.
Right. And Brian McClendon really sounded like he was fired up about the addition of Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff, Jake. And our premium membership right now, $10 until August. of 23.
Yeah, August
running out-
31st. You get the whole month.
It's running out pretty quick, though. You're running out of time to jump on that. So we encourage you to give DawgsHQ's premium $10 deal a spin.
How many more days you got of that? 2 days?
I think-
Right? And then
I
aren't they
think we
flipping it in
just
the
got-
new year?
Yeah, I
hint,
think we-
hint. I don't know if we're supposed to be saying that, but hint, hint. You sign up.
We're
now.
saying that.
We're saying it now.
That's
We're saying
sales 101. Uncle Glenn Hartley knows about sales.
We're
Uncle
breaking the
Glenn
news.
is sales 101. You got to create a sense of urgency. Tell him.
All right, let's chop some wood finally. Y'all can do whatever you want. I'm just going to chop wood about one position player, one guy specifically that I think needs to show up in this game, and we haven't talked about him very much on this show this week, and we don't really talk about him a ton. But I'm talking about Pop Wood, chop wood. Maybe let's not
Family
say
ball.
that. Let's not say that too loud. Pop.
Yes, Pop.
Dumas Johnson. We don't talk about him much. And he's admitted himself this year that he's had some issues with effort, finishing plays. And I don't know if that's a kind of a microcosm of Georgia playing down to some of its teams it's played down against. I want to see how this rest versus rust of a month off affects Jamon Dumas Johnson, because if Georgia's got him in some sort of spiral against C.J. Stroud or trying to, blow up the run game and blow up that offensive line, which I don't think has been tested, obviously, by a front seven like Georgia's yet. Michigan's is pretty good. Jalen Carter and Georgia have other things to say. I want to see how Pop plays, and I want to see how this month of reflection has shown up in his approach to the game and approach to practice and approach to the CFP.
I want to add something to that. Yesterday when we were practicing, they were doing that county fair style circuit drill. You heard Kirby Smart on the microphone yell, and he was talking to Pop, and he said, "You can't be a leader and be in the back of the line. You can't be and you've been late or lagging lately, soft." I don't think that is an indication of the way he feels about Jamon. I think it is an indication as to what he thinks Jamon can be. And Kirby is kind of gained a reputation. I was about to say notorious, but I got to stop using that word because it doesn't mean what everybody thinks it does. But he has become very well known for just really, really getting after the players that he likes. And I think a lot of the reasons he does that is because he knows those players can take it. And, guys who can take it like that. And that was part of the family ball thing that Jamon was talking about yesterday or a couple of days ago, was that, listen, you got to be able to take coaching. And, that's part of being a family, even though Todd Monken apparently not a big fan of. He said that they're going to fire him if he sucks.
Ball.
So don't talk to me about family.
Well, and I was going to add to that, Kirby's hard on guys that he knows need to step up, need to play well. Maybe not. Maybe it's not that they're not playing well. It's that they need to continue to play well. I mean, look at what you mentioned it on the show. You mentioned it on the show earlier, but I think it was earlier this week. But Keely Ringo before the Tennessee game, the video that came out about that. Mm-hmm. Kirby was hard on him too. And so being hard on Pop, not anything. Don't read too much into it.
Go ahead and swing that axe, Palmer.
I am going to.
Don't break any lamps in that Westin hotel room that you're in right now.
Or I tell you what, dude, if you've got it, just crank up the chainsaw. Just really get after it here.
I'm gonna chop wood about Malachi Starks. Somebody that we've heard a lot about this year. Obviously, stepping into a big starting spot for Georgia. Georgia needed somebody to step in. I mean, losing a first rounder there. Malachi has certainly played. Like a star freshman and maybe a potential first rounder down the road. Obviously there's a long way to go and he's got a lot left to accomplish at Georgia, but just talking to him, spent some time, talk to him. First guy that I talked to, he is, making his dream come true. Go check out that story But he talked about, hey, during the fall camp, before Oregon, he actually did dream about it. It wasn't just a, cliche, hey,
Had a premonition.
something that I've dreamed about forever, yada, yada, yada. This was an actual, deep sleep dream that he had, where he said he saw himself going out making plays, saw himself running around, having fun with his teammates, communicating, stuff like that. And so, first of all, football is always on his mind. No doubt about that. He's got that in him. But second of all, he's one hell of a player, has shown that time and time again. Obviously didn't have his best game against LSU, but he's a freshman, guys, and he's going to have freshman moments. And, he has a lot of moments where he doesn't look like a freshman, and he's going to have a couple where he does. But I think what's important is that most of those have happened in practice. He's had to learn the hard way. I remember writing about it this spring and this fall. It felt like Kirby and Muschamp were hard on Malachi, but it was some tough love because they knew what they needed in him. They knew what they had in him, and they knew what they needed from him. And he's certainly been, an outstanding player for them this year, and they're going to need outstanding play from him in this game.
If I had to pick one guy to kind of, do what Wes did, I would pick Malachi Starks, because I think really highly of the kid. I think he played awful in the SEC championship game in a lot of different ways. He didn't tackle well, didn't cover well. And I don't think he's a freshman anymore. And I don't think Kirby would say he's a freshman anymore either. He is it was the 13th game of his career, and he just didn't play well. And most of it came in the second half. Almost all of it came in the second half. And I think he showed up more than anybody else because he was the freshman who lost focus, and they really get after that guy. Whereas, I think Chris Smith was probably the only DB that maybe him and a little bit Kamari Lassiter who kind of got it going in the second half, because the others struggled there. But so I think that is the number one. If I had to pick one guy and say, hey, Georgia really needs this guy to be great against Ohio State and it'll win, I think Malachi Starks.
It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, it's probably that guy. And, I don't think he's got to go out there and change the game. I just think he has to go out there and play good football. And the thing about playing that position, man, is you can be great and not register anything. It's not like Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter can go out there and be great, and Jalen Carter is going to do some things. There's going to be some TFLs. There's going to be a sack. There's going to be a collarbone on the turf or something like that. But, so that's the difference in those positions. I'm going to chop wood on special teams, and Palmer knows how much I love special teams.
Love them, Jake.
I love them. I
Specialty teams.
More.
I love interviewing kickers and punters. By the way, did we get to Brett Thorson today?
I didn't see him.
Yeah, he was there. We lost it. We failed. Brett Thorson. So it has nothing to do with the punt. It has nothing to do with kickoff return, punt return. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, University of Georgia. Blocked kicks. I've been thinking about it a lot this week. I've been looking back at kind of this year, just big games in general. You look back, Georgia blocked a kick against Alabama. Georgia blocked a kick in the SEC championship game. Georgia blocked a kick in the 17 SEC championship game. 12 SEC championship game. I think that's something that you kind of got to keep an eye on in a game like this, and one that I don't know necessarily decides the game, but kind of turns the game. You talk about that 12 game. Georgia shouldn't have been in that game the way they were getting the ball run on them. But they block a field goal. It turns into a touchdown for Georgia, and it's mayhem, and Georgia's in it for 4 quarters. Watch out for that, because I think that's a big part of it. We've been talking to some Ohio State folks this week, and one of the things that came out from talking to some guys over at our Letterman Row site was that Ohio State likes to come after punts. Who makes the big special teams play in this game, and specifically looking at Georgia, if it can get Ohio State to line up and kick it, because listen, that's the thing too. These two teams are very similar in terms of they'll get in the red zone 10 straight times and score 10 straight touchdowns, and then they'll have 5 in a row where they kick 3. That's just kind of how they work. They're kind of hot and cold like that. So I think that the team that can keep you from getting on the board at all when you get in the red zone is the team that's very, very in very, very good shape to win this game.
Yep. They've turned a lot of Georgia's significant wins and championships for sure.
Yep.
Guys, we're going to put a pin in this for now. We will be back at the Bins the next time y'all hear from us, actually talking about a game.
Yeah.
That just happened. So
There's a game. There's a game that's going on.
Yep. Georgia and Ohio State are done talking.
Did you watch the game?
We're done talking. We're going to have to go watch the tape. We're done talking for a couple days. Appreciate y'all subscribing and listening and commenting. Can always count on y'all, loyal dogs, in the comments. Until we meet again, peace.